Today I will introduce a new topic, that is Java database connectivity. In short, we call it as JDBC. Now here, the ultimate aim of this particular topic is we need to connect to a database through a Java application. So here you can see we have three terms like Java, we have a database, and we have the connectivity. So here, what is database? Now database is a place to store some data, or we can retrieve the data from a database, and also we can manipulate like insert, update, delete, alter. Such things can be done in the database. And we have a Java application. Now through Java application, I need to make the connectivity between the database as well as your program. So instead of opening the database directly, now we need to write an application called Java application, and through which I need to connect to the database. Once it is connected, then I can perform all the SQL operations on that. So Java database connectivity is an application programming interface, that is API, for the Java programming language, which defines how a client may access a database. I want to connect to a database for inserting some records, for updating some records, for deleting, for selecting some records. So I require a programming language. So here the Java is a programming language, and in order to connect through Java to a database, we have an API called JDBC, Java Database Connectivity API. In that we have got a package called java.sql, through which I can use the class and interfaces available under SQL package, and I can connect to the database. So it's a Java-based data access technology used for Java database connectivity. Now if you see this diagram, now here we have a Java program, and that is nothing but a custom code what we develop. And through the JDBC API, I'm able to connect to the database. See the real-time examples like Gmail, Yahoo Mail, or the Amazon. When you just sign up your information, you just fill up the complete information and click a submit button, and you get a response that the transaction is completed or your email ID is created. But actually we need to think of where the particular data has gone, whatever you have been filled up. Now that has been stored into the database. Now inside database you have so many components like tables, which is nothing but rows and columns. Then you have some views, you have indexing concept, you have sequences concept. So ultimately your data will be storing into the database. Now let's say you take a Gmail example. For the first time you are giving the complete information with so many values like email, alternate email ID, mobile number, and your name and country, state, and all these things. Now that is being stored into the database. Now second time we give only username and password. Now once you click the particular submit button after giving username and password, it needs to connect to the database, and it will cross verify with the user ID and password what you have been registered at the time of sign up. And if both the values are equal, then you have been logged into the inbox. And you have a provision for changing the password. But what are the password you have been storing again into the database? The new password, it has been cross verified, and then only you have been authenticated and will be getting into your inbox. So like that, you do have so many applications where the database is acting as a backend. So all the real-time examples, when you see, you have the user interface through which the user can interact, and just they enter some values and click a button and they want the result. So the database is a backend, and in order to communicate or connect to this particular backend, I require a Java program through which I need to connect to the database. And in that particular program, you write the database connection steps. Now JDBC or Java database connectivity is a Java API to connect and execute the query with the database. And here the database will understand structured query language. That is nothing but the queries. Suppose you want to create a table, we have a create query. For inserting, we have insert query. For update, we have update query. So we do have a certain syntax. So the database will understand only the SQL queries, not the other language. So once the database is connected, I can perform all types of SQL queries on that through your Java application. Now it is a specification from a company called Sun Microsystems, who have been initiated the Java programming, that provides a standard abstraction of API protocol for Java applications to communicate with various databases. Now this is the company who have been initiated your Java programming, and they specify that through the JDBC API, we can communicate with various databases. Now it provides the language with the Java database connectivity standards. So how to connect to the database? We do have some steps. The steps have been predefined, and you need to use the particular steps, and you need to connect to the database. It is used to write programs required to access databases. JDBC along with the database driver can access database and spreadsheets. So database like Oracle, MySQL, then SQL Server, then you can make the spreadsheets to act as a database. MS Access is a database. Now you want to communicate with the particular databases, and you have a provision to write a Java program through which you are connecting. But here the thing is, your Java application works with a different syntax, and your database and spreadsheets are working with a different syntax, and both are incompatible to each other. They don't understand each other languages. So we require a particular driver which is used to communicate or translate one language to the other language and vice versa. So we take the help of the driver. The enterprise data stored in a relational database can be accessed with the help of JDBC APIs like Oracle, MySQL. Now these are the relational databases where the data has been stored in case of rows and columns in the table. So we can just connect to that and we can retrieve through JDBC API. JDBC is a Java API for communicating with database systems supporting the structured query language. So through SQL, we are able to write the queries and we can communicate with the database systems. JDBC supports a variety of features for querying and updating data and for retrieving the query results also. Suppose I want to insert, as I said, insert query is there. If at all I want to retrieve the results also, we do have a select query. So what type of results you want to generate? So you need to modify your select query and do. So a lot of queries are available. So according to the requirement of the application, you can write the complete queries in the Java program itself. And when we execute the program, it needs to connect to database and the results need to be produced. JDBC also supports metadata retrieval, such as querying about relations. Relations is nothing but the tables in the database and the names and types of relational attributes. Now, when we talk about metadata, we actually say data about data, but here the actual data are nothing but your values, which are in case of rows and columns, whatever you have been entered. But now the question is, what is metadata of that particular actual data? Now, if you see, the relation is nothing but a table, what I mentioned. There we have the columns, the column data types, the size of the particular data type. It could be number or varchar, or it could be some constraints. Now, these are nothing but additional data about your actual values. So in that sense, we call it as data about data. So in simple terms, you can say metadata is nothing but a structure of a particular table or relation. Now, model for communicating with the database. So first we need to open the connection, database connection. Then we need to create a statement object in order to work with SQL statements, nothing but SQL queries. Then execute that particular queries using statement object. It could be sending queries or it could be fetching the results like select query. And whenever you're writing the Java program, there could be some exceptions. So generally we have like SQL exception. If your query is wrong, maybe we don't write the syntax perfectly. So there will be a syntax error in SQL queries. So we get an SQL exception. And when you're loading the drivers, what I was saying, the drivers are translating the Java language, Java calls to the database calls, and database calls back to the Java calls. So we need to load the driver, the appropriate driver for the respective database. If you are connected to Oracle, we have a separate driver. If you're connected to MySQL database, we have a separate driver. So there, if something is wrong in the particular line or code, we get a class not found exception. So it's mandated that you better go for exception handling to find the errors. What is the actual purpose of JDBC? Enterprise applications. So when you see big companies, they're trying to maintain a huge set of data. And if the enterprise applications are created using a Java W technology, that is enterprise edition technology, need to interact with the databases to store application specific information. So either it's a big company or a small company, obviously we need to store the data. So we take the help of the databases. So interacting with the database requires efficient database connectivity, which can be achieved by the open database connectivity driver. Now, generally the databases will be holding a driver called ODBC, and this ODBC can understand the database language. So by using that, we can interact with the databases. So ODBC driver is used in combination with JDBC to interact or communicate with various kinds of databases such as Oracle, MS Access, MySQL, and SQL Server database, and many more. So this ODBC driver is basically residing at the database end. JDBC driver will be residing at the Java end, but both need to coordinate and communicate with the Java program as well as the actual database. So by using these two, we can easily translate the Java calls to database and database calls to Java calls back. Now coming to the components of JDBC. So JDBC API, that is nothing but as I said, the application programming interface is nothing but packages. So what packages you are going to import when you develop a JDBC application? So this API provides methods and interfaces for an easy and effective communication with the databases. Now it provides two main packages. One is java.sql, and javax.sql is nothing but an extended version of the existing Java SQL packages to interact with the databases. Now if you want to connect to a particular database, we have some interfaces and classes. So we have a class called driver manager class, which is used to connect to the database. We have a connection interface for creating a connection reference variable. Then for statement, SQL statement working, we have a statement interface. So we have some methods. So all these are available under java.sql. So we need to import these packages based on our requirement. The JDBC driver manager. Now this is most important class here because it holds one method called get connection. And in that get connection, we do give what is the sub protocol used for database connection and what is the database name. That means which database we're able to connect and what is the user ID and password for the particular database. So driver manager is responsible for establishing the connection to the database through the driver. Now here we have a test suite called JDBC test suite. It ensures the proper functioning of JDBC driver. So the JDBC driver need to be monitored properly so that if that particular driver is functioning properly only, then the translation of the Java calls to database calls and database back to Java calls will be done. So the test suite is responsible for ensuring that the JDBC driver is functioning properly. Now we have a JDBC ODBC bridge driver. Now it represents a reference implementation for JDBC and it is used to connect the database drivers to a specific database. So as I said, the Java program cannot directly communicate with the database since both are incompatible languages. We require a mediator. So this JDBC ODBC bridge driver is a default driver which is used to communicate with your Java application and the backend. This bridge translates JDBC method calls to ODBC function calls. This bridge is used to implement JDBC for any database that uses an ODBC driver. So most of the database go by ODBC, but apart from that ODBC driver, we do have some other third-party drivers where we can use. But the ultimate aim of this particular JDBC is to write a Java application through which you are able to communicate to the database. Now coming to the interface and classes what are available under JDBC API. So as I said, java.sql package, we hold class and interfaces. So one of the classes, driver manager class, used to connect an application to the database. So I said get connection method is available under driver manager class. By using that get connection, we are able to connect to the database by providing some parameters. The connection interface used to make a connection to the database using database connection string and credentials. So which database and what is user ID and password to connect to certain database, we are going to mention in the get connection. So these two are interlinked, because once you use this class get connection method is going to return this connection reference variable. Now, when you want to work with SQL statements, I need to create a statement reference variable. So I have a statement interface. So it is used to make a query to the database. So we have a prepared statement interface. So statement interface is a super interface. Prepared statement is a sub interface of it. So it is used for a query with placeholder values. So when you go for the statement interface, a more number of resources are required and more number of transactions are required for performing the SQL operations. But here we are going to check the syntax of the query only once, and later on we can work with the values. But here what happens in the statement interface is every query we need to work with the syntax checking as well as the actual values. But here what happens is syntax is only checked for one time, and later on we are going to work with the actual values. That means if you compare these two, statement interface and prepared statement interface, the number of transactions or operations will be less comparatively with the statement interface. So callable statement interface is a third type of statement, which is a sub interface of prepared statement interface, and prepared statement interface is a sub interface of statement interface. Now this callable statement purpose is completely different. It is used to call stored procedure or functions in database. So stored procedure is nothing but a set of instructions which can perform a particular task, but here the procedure is going to be created in the database, and that particular procedure is going to store inside a database unless the developer or the Java application is not calling the particular stored procedure, it will not going to execute. So here the callable statement responsibility is to call the stored procedure. Now result set interface, it represents the query results obtained from the database. So whenever I perform a select query, I just retrieve my data from the database and I need to store into a temporary memory. The temporary memory is called as a result set. And later on I need to print the values by taking from the temporary result set. So in order to work out with the temporary memory or the result set, we have a result set interface, which is going to store the results which have been extracted from the actual table. Now result set metadata interface. So result set is holding some values and its additional parameters like column name and what memory, how much memory is allocated, and all these things can be considered as the result set metadata. So I hope I have given some input on what is JDBC and how it has been using the JDBC API in order to connect to the database, and what is the priority of the database. So if you like this video, please subscribe, comment, and share it to your friends. Thank you.